As a result of your memo, local school officials and parents may not speak up in these meetings out of fear that the federal government will do something to them. So that's a poisonous, chilling effect. Apparently that letter wasn't actually supported by organization, but was sent by 2 unauthorized staff. So last week the organization disavowed it, since you and the White House based your memo on this delegitimized letter. I assume you're going to revoke your extremely divisive memo that you said was instigated because of that letter. That's a question.
Senator, the memo, which you referred to as one page, it responds to concerns about violence, threats of violence, other criminal conduct. That's all it's about. And all it asks is for federal law enforcement to consult with, meet with local law enforcement to assess the circumstances, to strategize about what may or may not be necessary, to provide federal assistance if it is necessary.
Presumably, you wrote the memo because of the letter. The letter is disavowed now. So you're going to keep your memo going anyway, right? Is that what you're telling me?
Senator, I have the letter from NSBA that you're referring to. It apologizes for language in the letter, but it continues its concern about the safety of school officials and school staff. The language in the letter that they disavow is language was never included in my memo and never would have been. I did not adopt every concern that they had in their letter. I adopted only the concern about violence and threats of violence, and that hasn't changed.
Who in the
Parents expressing their concerns about not only the curriculum, but also just generally the education of their children in public schools. Would you agree that parents have a fundamental right to be involved in their children's education?
Absolutely. This is the job of parents to be involved, and this is the role of the First Amendment to protect their ability to be involved. That's why my memo begins by saying that we respect the right to spirited debate about curriculum, about school policies, about anything like that.
So it's not.
You agree that a natural consequence of your memo could be chilling free speech, protected speech by parents protesting local school board policies?
Senator, the memo is aimed only at violence and threats of violence. It states on its face that vigorous debate is protected. That is what this is about, and that is all this is about.
What about harassment and intimidation? Are those federal crimes?
They are federal crimes.
Are you referring to like witness tampering, intimidation under 18 U.S.C. 1512, or what?
To 18 U.S.C. 2261A, which makes it a crime with intent to injure, harass, or intimidate, placing a person in reasonable fear of serious bodily injury through communications over the internet. Likewise, 47 U.S.C. 223A, making telephones calls with intention to harass. Now, I want to be clear, though, that those only are within, I take your point, those are only within what is permitted by the First Amendment. And the Supreme Court has been clear about that, too. In the Virginia versus Black case, the court explained when intimidation is not protected by the Constitution, and that is when it is made with the intent of placing the victim in fear of bodily harm or death. So that's what we're concerned about here.
Well, and one of the things that
Judge Garland, on May 11th, Tony Fauci testified that his agency, quote, has not ever and does not now fund gain-of-function research in the Wuhan Institute of Virology. Last week, his agency admitted that they had, in fact, funded gain of research in the Wuhan Institute of Virology. Are you investigating Tony Fauci for lying to Congress?
So the long-time rule in the Justice Department is not to discuss pending investigations, potential investigations.
Okay, that's fine. Do the same thing. You said it wasn't in your October 4th memorandum. It was in another office's memorandum. It wasn't another office's memorandum, Judge. It was in a press release from your office right here in front of me, October 4th, 2021, for immediate release. You're going to create a task force that includes the National Security Division. What on earth does the National Security Division have to do with parents who are expressing disagreements at school boards?
Nothing in this memorandum or any memorandum is about parents expressing disagreements with their school boards. The memorandum makes clear that parents are entitled and protected by the First Amendment to have vigorous debates. We don't, the Justice Department is not interested in that question at all. It is interested
Okay, so even in that case,
violence.
what is the National Security Division, Judge? These are the people that are supposed to be chasing jihadists and Chinese spies. What does the National Security Division have to do with parents at school boards?
This is not, again, about parents at school boards. This is about threats of violence.
Okay, let me turn to that because you've said that phrase repeatedly throughout the morning. Threats or violence and threats of violence. Violence and threats of violence. Yeah. We've heard it a dozen times this morning. As Senator Lee pointed out, the very first line in your October 4th memorandum refers to harassment and intimidation. Why do you continue to dissemble in front of this committee that you are only talking about violence and threats of violence when your memo says harassment and intimidation?
Senator, I said in my testimony that it involved other kinds of criminal conduct, and I explained to Senator Lee that the statutory definitions of those terms and the constitutional definitions of those terms involve threats of violence.
Okay, let's look at one of those.
And one of the suggestions made by your U.S. attorney is parents can be prosecuted for repeated telephone calls. Not threatening anyone, just on the theory that repeated telephone calls could be harassment. Really?
Senator, I haven't seen that memorandum. I've tried to express as clearly as I can here.
I heard you, General, but this is one of your U.S. attorneys.
Senator, if you're thinking of
Again, I haven't seen.
Isn't that special?
technically chairing the hearing where Senator Durbin goes to vote.
Attorney General, I know you're tired of talking about the memo,
I'm not.
but did you say you're not?
I'm happy to answer any questions you have, Senator.
I think most of us and most of the American people are just sort of flabbergasted if your answer is you have no regrets about this memo. Is that what you're telling us? You think this was wise?
Senator, the obligation of the Justice Department is to protect the American people against violence, including threats of violence, and that particularly includes public officials. I think that is still a concern for the department. This memo doesn't do anything more than ask our law enforcement to consult with state and local law enforcement to determine whether they need assistance in this regard and whether there are any federal jurisdictional issues involved. The memo
General,
recognizes
you
the right.
and I both know that it is political hackery.
Have been carried out. When you look at the memo to parents, you've heard a lot about that today, and it's because we're hearing a lot about that. And I just have to ask you, knowing that you really helped bring to justice those that caused the Oklahoma City bombing, would you really honestly put parents in the same category as a Terry Nichols or a Timothy McVeigh?
My God, absolutely not.
Then why would you ever release a memo? I mean, did you write that memo? Did staff write that memo? What would have led you to do this? It is so over the top.
Senator, there's nothing in the memo that in any way draws any comparison, anything like that. This memo is about violence and threats of violence. It's not
Sir, I have to tell you that that may be your opinion. And you know, many times perception is reality. And reading that memo myself, Tennesseans reading that memo, what they found in that memo, what they heard you say was if you show up and you question these school boards, you will be deemed a domestic terrorist.
But now, of course, we've seen the memo from your own Justice Department advising state and local and other prosecutors about all of the different federal causes of action that they can bring against parents that are not about violence, they're about harassment and intimidation. I'm looking here at this memo. it identifies no fewer than 13 possible federal crimes involving harassment and intimidation, including making annoying phone calls. Do you think a parent who makes a phone call to a school board member that she has elected, that school board member deems annoying, should be prosecuted, General Garland?
No, I don't. And the Supreme Court has made quite clear that the word intimidation with respect to the constitutional protection is one that directs a threat to a person with the intent of placing the victim in fear of bodily harm or death.
You're the Attorney General of the United States. This was not a tweet you sent. This is a memo to the Federal Bureau of Investigations saying, go investigate parents as domestic terrorists.
That is not what the memo says at all. It does not.
Is it what the letter says?
That is not what.
Is it what the letter says?
I don't care what the letter says.
You don't care. You said it was the basis of your memo. You testified under oath before the House of Representatives. The letter was the basis of your memo. Now you don't care about the letter?
The letter and public reports of violence and threats of violence. My memo says nothing about domestic terrorism, says nothing about parents committing any such things. My memo is an attempt to get an assessment of whether there is a problem out there that the federal government needs to
The
resolve.
letter on its face.
They repudiated their letter. Why won't you just say you made a mistake?
Because they didn't
Why would you say you made a mistake and you relied on bad information?
Because they didn't repudiate their letter. They repudiated language in the letter which I did not adopt and don't agree with. But their concerns are about safety in the schools and about violence, and this is a core concern of the Justice Department. That's why.
Thank you. Senator Blackburn has asked for 3 minutes, and I will conclude with my own 3 minutes after that. Senator Blackburn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Attorney General Garland, you just told me that you don't think you ever met Susan Hennessy. Did you hire Susan Hennessy?
I have sign-off authority for everybody, I suppose, in the Justice Department.
Okay.
That's the best I can answer with respect to that. But the question you were worried about, Senator, and I understand, had to do with Durham. And as I explained, she has nothing to do with the Durham investigation.
Okay.